many four-letter words can I use on that?
Don't get taken down. Figure it out. Like, find a way to not get taken down, even if there's a minute left.
Oh, Nick, I'm a top guy, so I love top wrestling.
We have an amazing culture within our program, and you know, we build it. We don't buy it. We build it.
So I think that wrestling is the greatest sport on earth.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into On3 Wrestling. I'm your host, Nick Kosko. It's actually, and I can't believe I didn't even write this down. It's episode 100. So what better yet to have this man on right here, Jason Bryant, the Hall of Famer himself. You know him, I know him. If you know wrestling, you know Jason Bryant. Matt Talk Online, great newsletter that's in my inbox, my email inbox. I can't believe people still use email, by the way, but we do. And I get that every single morning. Jason, how are you, my man? I can't believe you are the distinguished guest. I just realized this morning.
You know, I kind of missed out on Blood Rounds 500. They just did their own thing. I was thinking about, I'm coming up on 800, I think, of short time. Anniversaries they're so 2015. No, but congrats on 100, man. I've seen this show from the onset. Every time I see it pop up, I'll make sure I've got the notifications on YouTube. So it's going to be in that newsletter that you mentioned. So I appreciate what you're doing. You've come a long way, man. So, from who is Nick Kosko to like, Costco's coming around to like, that guy's good. So it's cool to see your progression from afar for sure.
Hey, I appreciate that, Jason. Yeah, I go back to, I think I had you on my college radio show. I want to say about maybe, what year is it, 2015? So I want to say 8 or 9 years ago, I think we first got in touch. That was a long time ago. And then this thing at On3, went from, all right, I'm going to start doing some additional wrestling content for my full-time job. And it just turned into, these 2.5-minute news bit videos into just full-fledged interviews and some good updates along the way, either weekly, twice a week. And, now that's wrestling season. Who knows? Maybe there's going to be more this season as the week rolls on. So we'll just start right there. And obviously, you already came in with the Jersey flavor with your Paulsboro wrestling shirt. Of course, people know the Southwest Jersey historic program. So we have the Jersey flavor. And speaking of the Jersey flavor, that's where wrestling season started just last weekend, the All-Star Classic inside Jersey Mike's Arena at Rutgers. With that, it was a lot of great high-quality matchups. We saw some lulls. We saw some exciting ones, but I think most importantly, we got back into wrestling season. What were your first impressions of the year from the All-Star Classic? Maybe some other things you saw throughout the dual meet season.
One thing I love about the All-Star Classic is I came on with the NWCA in 2005, and that was right when they were shifting it from a mid-season February kind of thing to kind of a kickoff. It was kind of later in November, and then it's kind of been this kickoff weekend. When we've had it, and Flow Wrestling's done a great job at kind of taking that event under its wing and making it a premier thing, the spotlight. They give a lot of attention to it. And that's something we did when I was at the NWCA. We featured, it wasn't just one presser. We did breakdowns on each matchup and historical stuff. So I've always loved the event. One thing that you get with the All-Star is you get high-level wrestlers. What you get with the All-Star is you also get that NCAA final type of slow match sometimes. You don't necessarily get a ton of craziness. What you also get with the All-Stars, you get some experimentation. One year when we were at Penn, we tried a three-point takedown. We tried a step out. Actually, I think the three-point takedown was put in Atlanta, actually, in, I want to say 2015, before we got it. The step out, I think, was at Penn in 14. So it's a breeding ground for experimental rules. You don't get a huge, cross-section of actual data from it, but you kind of get to see how it is, at least with the high-level guys. You don't really get the fur fly, but again, these are high-level guys. Even if the match doesn't count, they don't want to lose. So, it's very much, I'd say it is a preview of what we get for the NCAA championships. And, people's like, oh, it's not any ones versus twos. If you look at the matchups annually with the All-Star Classic, let's look at just the 10 typical Division I matches we have. You put that and you line that up with any other event. There's going to be rarely you have any other events finals except for the NCAA finals compare to the wrestlers you see there. We'll have semis in Vegas that won't have nearly as many All-Americans, returning All-Americans and top 10 guys in it. You'd be like, oh, these are the greatest ones. It's like, so you got to understand, like, people expect 1 versus 2s. Well, yeah. 1 versus 2s, it's great. It's a good idea, but you know what? People are on pitch counts now. Coaches have different ideas. Some guys are, they're not in midseason shape yet. And even though they don't count for NCAA seeding, we know that, the independent media outlets that do rankings will look at the match and they count them, and that influences the coaches' rankings on down the line. So while it doesn't count for seeding, it does influence things. But to get to the actual wrestling, I was at a hockey rink during it, so I had to go back and watch the recaps. I picked and choose some of the things, and I was like, I looked at the score, I'm like, okay, may not watch a whole lot of 4-1s. I'm gonna look for some scoring action. So I like to skim through for things that I don't watch live. I'm very much a live wrestling consumer. So if it's not live, it's really hard for me to go back and watch it and pretend it's live, because I've got the updates. I'm in the Discord servers. I'm on X. I'm in the social media groups. I'm talking constantly. It's like when I watch hockey, I'm talking with hockey fans, and when I watch wrestling, I'm in the chat. I'm talking with wrestling fans. I'm consuming it just like you are. So it's really hard for me to try to watch something later. So I'll consume it in bits and pieces. But good event, good kickoff to the season. Rutgers, eat clean, bro. I'm just waiting. I don't know if they're sponsoring it, but when you go to Jersey for wrestling, it is still unlike any other atmosphere, because you're going to get called some things you didn't think. These were things like Jeff Fox would say that would make truckers blush. It's an environment. It's hard to beat the passion there in the Garden State when it comes to wrestling. So, I love the event. I think Rutgers did a great job, at least from a distance, on putting this thing on. My man Hazard was on the comm, so it was. It's always fun to watch that event. I love that event.
Yeah, it was good to see Hazard on the floor there when I was up there last weekend. Of course, I followed it up myself with the quad meet the next day. So it was a long 12 hours for me, or long 12 hours for me, I should say. As far as some of the matchups in there, we saw a lot of familiar faces, but they're in new places, to steal a football term from ESPN. But guys like Zach Ryder, he was a redshirt last year for Penn State. He had arguably the biggest showing for Oklahoma State with his major decision over Jackson Smith of Maryland. Other guys like Casey Swiderski, Iowa State to Oklahoma State, Lenny Pinto, Nebraska to Rutgers, Tay Gadiali, Campbell to Michigan. When you look at this, and I know a lot of these guys are, aside from Ryder, most of these guys are veterans. We don't see too much of this anymore. I guess since the COVID era is now sort of, almost gone, if not gone entirely now, where, you have the 5th, 6th, 7th year guys where they're looking for the final place of their college career, maybe even the 3rd place of their college career. But I guess my question is, when you look at the, same faces, new places, has college wrestling adjusted to this? Like, is it not quite the shock it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago?
To a point, I think we're looking at a lot of these guys. They want to get that extra year back in the, I think when they first started awarding this, not say first, they've been doing the 6th years, I think, since the late 70s.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to like some of the 6-year guys in like that 2004 to 2008, 2009 range. They weren't really performing. They were injury 6th years. They weren't. I got hurt half a year, and I was, you can get an extra year for just about anything these days. Oh, well, used to be you sat out, you didn't get that. It wasn't a red shirt. If there were certain things. It used to be you could sit out and D2 and D3 and have that. I'm not enrolled that semester. You get 8 semesters. Okay, you get that. You don't redshirt in D3. So now you see D1. It's like, okay, well, like Gable, for example. Like how did you sat out? Like what did 8 and Ferrari like? How's the Olympic red shirt? The Olympic red shirts are the things that I think it kind of bugged me a little bit, because they thought they put a clamp down on that when guys that were like 7th and 8th at the NCAAs were redshirting to take an Olympic red shirt. You didn't even enter the U.S. Open, so those extra years. But at the same point, we're in an era of athletes being able to command, like the fact that they can sign autographs, get paid for it, the fact that their names could be on camp flyers and be advertised. That's a good thing for our sport, because so many years we had, Jay Robinson wrestling camp and Minnesota staff. Like now you could back in the Dustin Schlater, you could Roger Kidd, Damian Hahn, you could have had all those guys on your flyer, for example. For those particular types of schools and such. So that's a plus. But when it comes back to the initial question with the years, people are graduating. They're getting college credits coming out, especially the high achievers, the kids that are coming from those high achieving high schools. They're coming in with college credits. So when they go their 4 years of eligibility, they've already got the degree. They're already working on a master's. And say if that master's degree isn't offered at their school, and there's some schools like have good wrestling programs, you want an opportunity to wrestle, and you've given your degree, you've done what you're supposed to do for that school. You have graduated. The degree, obviously the role of colleges in sports, you can look at now and be like, when you look at college football, But the ultimate idea is to get a degree, right?
Yeah.
So if you've gotten your degree, you've fulfilled your academic requirement for that school. And if you have eligibility based on, credits coming in, summer classes, and you've got enough wiggle room to transfer and get into a different situation and change your environment and set yourself up for maybe a potential senior level career, which a lot of those guys that do when they go to Michigan do, how is that a negative? Yeah, I would love to see you sit there and nobody transfer unless there's, everybody's got to transfer. Every situation's different, but
yeah,
I don't have a problem with it as wrestling. I don't think we're not seeing the wholesale bag transfers as much. We are seeing them because there are people with money that like to be influential in all walks of life. Wrestling is no different. So I think we've kind of calmed down. Those extra years, you're getting those extra grad years, the 5th, 6 years from the COVID thing, dissipated enough. I think it's going to be, you're probably going to see a decent amount a year, but I don't think we're going to see, half the rosters turning over every year like we are. We're like, to draw a hockey comparison, they just opened up the CHL, which is the Canadian Hockey League. There's 3 major junior leagues up there, and those guys weren't eligible for NCAA competition. Now they're in. They're displacing a lot of the high school talents for the kids coming from the tier 2 and tier 3 junior leagues. They're like, okay, where are we going to play? Well, it's making D1 hockey tougher. It's making D3 hockey tougher because those kids that were maybe fringe guys on low rosters, kind of like wrestling, you got your room guys. They go to a Division 3, end up playing and have a better opportunity. So, there's each sport's having their issues and they're tackling them in different ways. And I think wrestling, I think we're okay. I don't think there's a perfect solution to it, but I think we're okay right now.
Yeah, I think it's kind of settled itself, so to speak, considering, you go back to 2020, 2021, these guys are finding these 6th or 7th years seemingly out of nowhere. And you mentioned how you can kind of redshirt pretty much for, I missed 2 weeks in November. So that's going to count towards my medical redshirt next year. But I think it's kind of slowed down. And now I think it's just part of the fabric of the sport when especially you mentioned football, basketball. If you have those years and you mentioned the college credits already coming in, hey, I have a degree. I got it in 3 years. I still have a year. Maybe I can take a red shirt. I can just go spend 2 years at another institution if I'm pursuing a master's degree at another school. And that to me, it's just the reality of college sports now. So I think wrestling is now adjusted to it, and we've gotten past, the COVID era. So on the flip side, it's interesting because you look at the Young Bucks. We saw for the World Team stuff this year, Jax Forrest, PJ Duke. Obviously, Forrest is in his senior year of high school over at Bishop McCourt. PJ Duke's over at Penn State. But the youth movement to me is different this year. It's a little bit different than what it's been in the past. I feel like we've had more, well, again, social media plays a part in it. We have more attention on the youth movement right now. But the youth movement for wrestling, whether these guys are seniors in high school or they're going to be freshmen this year in college, or we saw it last year, they're just better now. So when you say youth movement, you say Jax Forrest, PJ Duke, Bo Bassett, Marcus Blaze, just to name a few guys off the top of the head. Is this youth movement different than it was, let's say, 5-10 years ago, where it's like, hey, now it's a young man's game, and it's an interesting comparison to how we're just talking about the 5th or 6th year guys, where, yeah, maybe this is like their last go round, but the guys that are coming in that are 18, 19 years old, like they're the ones that are, hey, maybe they're going to win the national title, right away.
Youth movement can be used in air quotes, I think, because when we're looking at these kids coming in, the high achievers, the high ones, the names you just mentioned, they're not 17 coming into college, turning 18. They're 19, turning 20. So they've got an extra year of seasoning. They've got a lot more reps. They also have, now this is to everybody's credit, those, and I'm not just saying using the age debate, because there are 17-year-old kids that are ready to go out of the chute, that turn 18 3 days before going to college. They're 18-year-old freshmen. They're ready to go. The reason for that is we have access to training, to video, high-level technique that you used to be able to go to a camp, and maybe you've got your VHS and you can bring back what it is. Heck, back in that, I don't think Kale allows a video camera in his, that Sammy Henson never has. So there's some guys that they protect their stuff. You've had camp systems for years that have been great at the high school level. Then now you got access to the Olympic Training Center, and guys like Jordan Burroughs, you can reach out and touch them, for example, and Olympic champions staying around, the developmental programs, the advent or the return of the age group world championships, and United World Wrestling, putting an emphasis on U17, U20, U23. So you have carrots to dangle. It used to be Fargo was it. And then, even you can go back further in time, it was other events, but Fargo, what used to be Field of Cadets was like it. Okay, those were your two big ones. Now you've got, okay, well, I'm not going to Fargo because I made a world team. I'm going to wrestle for Team USA. And the kids that desire that next level, they desire something bigger from college, and there's a lot of them. And it's not just the Blazes, the Bassett's, the Forests of the world. There's a whole group of them, and then they emerge. Where it is they're getting a lot more reps. They're getting better reps early. They're getting better access to coaching. And from a coach's standpoint, wrestling is to the point where you can actually do this full time. It's not, it's not looked at and scoffed at. Oh, you're making money in wrestling. Back, I remember, let's go back, I guess to this point, 30 years. That's a hard thing to say. I'm in the high school library looking up Internet. I had to log in, get permission to get on the internet in 1995, 96, and there's Internet. And people were getting mad at Tom Owens back in the day, the founder of Internet, for making money. Oh, wrestling should be free. These club coaches, oh, you run a camp, you charge how much? Thinking that the prices never changed from 1985. So we have an industry, we have a market base, I don't want to say tax base, but we have an industry that's available for specific clubs. Then we have opportunities for these kids to compete a lot more. So there's a lot more opportunity for a wider swath to compete, where you might have had 10 elite kids. Now you got 100, and we're noticing that cream rise to the top, where, you get a bigger pool of athletes, you find more gems. So there's the age thing. They're getting more reps. So they're ready. Their season, they're ready to go. I'm not going to tell Howard how to, what to do with Jax, but Jax Forrest does not need to wrestle another high school match. Right. Absolutely not. I don't think Bo does either, because they're so far. I mean, granted, they've been upset in the last year or two on the high school side, but let's look at the level of kids that they're wrestling normally, because there's a significant gap between the elite high school kid and your vast majority, the 90% of the high school kids. And some of those kids, they're ready to go now. There's the whole high school thing. That's another thing you got to make is a decision when you're looking at putting your kid to school. Do you start them in kindergarten in 5 or 6, or do you do that middle school repeat year? Do you do a gap year? I don't know. Like I said, my kids are fine. I don't have to worry about what I'm doing with their grades. But you get there, and at some point you hit a spot where, okay, I'm better than everybody. I'm not necessarily I'm not a grown ass man, but I'm a grown man. I'm definitely not a kid. So, those are the kids we're talking about. They're seasoned. They're ready to go. They're mature. They're physically mature. They are gifted, and they are dedicated, but they also have more reps. They've had better coaching. They've had better training. They've had better access to resources we didn't have 10 or 15 years ago. And that is not, that's not a negative, because a 17-year-old has the same thing. So, a little bit is the 19-year-olds are coming out ready, of course, but those 17-year-olds are better than they were 10 years ago. So to answer your question, it's not just that elite 1% that are better. It's that 2 to 10% that's better. Eventually, we're going to see that big mass of the winter wrestlers who are baseball players in the spring, and football players in the fall. They're going to get better because those kids around them are going to eventually get better. So, I don't think it's a youth movement. I just think it's better access to training. It's better access to the whole industry. Coaches have more benefit to stick around. Wrestlers are getting more reps. It's not just a seasonal sport anymore.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. And I go back, it just kind of clicked in my head when my senior year of high school, just to see the jump in skill level and the access to, as you mentioned, to the resources and the training. I go back to, South Jersey area. There was a kid named Jack Clark, New Jersey State champion my senior year back in 2014, came to St. Augustine Prep, went to McDonough Prep over in Maryland for 3 years. He came back, and I'm looking at him wrestle. We wrestled them in dual meets. And I'm like, there's no way this kid's ever going to lose, because I watch him, and the skill gap between him and your regular average high school wrestler, I'm like, that is insane. And then, of course, it gets tougher and tougher in the NJ State tournament, and he wins in overtime in the state finals that year. So I'm just like, okay. And he ended up being a D1 wrestler for a little bit of North Carolina. But now I'm looking at that compared to what the kids have in 2024, 2025. And you're like, oh, my God, like the 2025 version of a high school wrestler would destroy the one of 10 years ago, just based on what they have access to these days. A couple more on the college scene this season. So people talk about their favorite weight classes this year, the most competitive weight classes. I think 133 and 184 are the popular choices right now. Do you align with those same weight classes as, like, we don't know what's going to happen? This is the most depth, whether it's young guys, veteran guys like 133. What do you see as the deepest weight class or your favorite weight class this coming season as we roll through and eventually get to March?
Well, obviously, being a big guy, I'm always going to look at 197 heavyweight. Just because I don't care what heavyweight's a different type of wrestling. So that being said, I am very interested on what Mr. Fast Switch is doing out in Nebraska because he is extremely talented. He's must-see TV no matter what he's doing, where he's doing it. So you love him or hate him, you're gonna be okay. What's this guy gonna say now? How many watches is he gonna wear? What's up with? How many lines is he gonna have cut in the side of his head? What type of baggy joggers is he wearing with a gold chain? Like, you want to know what this guy's doing. And then again, he's also got really good technique. Now, he is not the most thrilling guy to watch when he's got good opponents. He's very smart. He's a very calculated wrestler. Guy knows when to pick his spots. So he's not going to go out there and beat the number 2 guy 12-2. He may have the talent to do that, for example, but we don't see it because he's just a little bit more calculated. He picks his spot, high percentage shooter, high percentage conversions on his shot. So, if you'll see him, tech the mid-range guy, of course, but I want to see how AJ is going to do it a new weight. If he's got 50, 60 stakes. If there's an NIL deal waiting for him in Nebraska, it's Omaha Steaks, dude.
Easy.
Easy. That is the most obvious one. If he hasn't done that already, that's one that's looking at you. 197 heavyweight, big guys that move. Of course, 125. I always love the bookends because 25, that's when you got that youth movement comes in. You got kids that, all right, they're on fire. They haven't really grown into the grown ass man yet. They're not hurting to make 25 by the time they will be maybe as a senior year. So you're seeing the stalwarts, the fresh blood. You've got, you got a freshman national champ last year. You've got it. It's unpredictable. So plus they just get after it and they go after it. You typically have a lot more fun starting out. Be like, all right, who's going to do it? And it's like the last couple of years, like how many number ones got beat at 125 throughout the course of the year. So those are always kind of the 3 weights that I tend to watch. One, because of, my favorite wrestler of all time was Bruce Baumgartner and Kerry McCoy. So I'm looking for the big active heavyweights. And then just from a sheer sports fan perspective, I can't really say at the beginning of the year what weight is going to be the craziest because that's where we want the 16s to beat the 1s, like in March Madness, for example. I don't care who wins. I really don't. I want to see good wrestling. I want the upsets. Like, I like chaos. One of the best things and one of the most painful things about working when I was doing the rankings were the rankings. And you hear the guys at Flow talk about this. You hear Earl talk about this at Intermat. You hear those that do rankings just like, oh, how could you? It is the most one of the most painful things to do that really has. What's it matter? If you don't like that ranking, you're just going to look at another one. But the point is, it gets people to, and like, it's so frustrating. Like, well, how do you do this? That's what I love. I love chaos. I love not having an answer for every single ranking and stuff like that. So that's where I just kind of sit back and wait for the year to unfold. And Vegas is usually where it sets the tone for it. So in a couple weeks, when that 5 seed gets beat by this freshman that maybe Willie's heard of, then you're like, Joe LeBlanc. I remember him at Wyoming broke out because he beat Vince Jones from Nebraska. It's like, who's this Wyoming kid? From Meeker, Colorado. We'll pat on the back there. I knew who Joe LeBlanc was. I had him ranked when he was in high school. So, but the point is, it's like you got to have the masses aren't going to know some of these good, below the top 100. No, the 100 to 150 to 200 kids they're good. Yeah. And they're really good in their state. They're going to break out because they didn't have the national attention. They're like the Forests, the Bassett's, the Blazes and stuff did. So those like things like Vegas that set the tone for the year, like, well, looks like, who was it that was it Stieber? Looks Stieber he got hurt the first year. Oh, well, then you got Hunter comes out. Oh, well, Vegas sets the tone, and then you watch that weight class all year. So there's those early season tournaments. You're like, oh wow. So that's what I love to sit back and watch more than I like to prognosticate, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, obviously we saw some chaos at NCAA's back in March, heavyweight obviously being the main event, to my chagrin, and other people's were like, oh, why is that the final match? And blah, blah, blah. And of course we're proven wrong because, wrestling this is why it could be the greatest sport where you don't see something like that coming. So I like that, where, don't forget about the rankings. We're just going to see what happens in Vegas and all of a sudden sets the tone. And then sure enough, we're going to see maybe about 20 other things that we didn't see coming throughout the dual meet season before we even get into the postseason. Speaking of duels, and since I know you're, I know you've kept track of me at least in this regard. Dual meets, I'm up here. I'm trying to spread the word. It seems like over the last couple of years, but national duels are coming up next weekend out in Tulsa. Really looking forward to this event. Now, for right now, it's in the beginning of the year. So, as a guy who wants a dual meet championship in NCAA wrestling at the end of the year, this to me feels like a good step in the right direction. It's a good event. It's an invitational right now. Whether they did it right or wrong, again, remains to be seen and see how they do it in the future. But because there's the money on the line, the prize pool on the line, it's NIL incentive based. So I think that'll at least give the motivation to these teams to maybe not fluster with their lineup, so to speak. But you're going to get some high quality action, seems like, from these 16 schools. First, what do you make of the national duels as an event? And then I guess to follow up with that, does this point us into the right direction? If you do want a dual meet championship for a team national title, does that get us in the right direction moving forward?
I want to say yes, but I've been behind this in terms of seeing going to the coaches convention, being part of some of those internal discussions offline for the last 20 years. I was a product of the Virginia duels, which were the national duels, the NWCA national duels were born back in the 80s. We needed, because they weren't dual meet tournaments around until 81. Virginia duels, we started it. And that's the club I came through. The reason I got hooked on wrestling was because I went to a dual meet on a Wednesday, high school dual meet. 2 days later, I'm at the Virginia duels watching my high school knock off the 18th ranked team in the country in a dual meet. I don't think I get that experience as a new fan if I'm sitting at a tournament in a gym all day. You take me to the NCAA tournament, sure, it's going to be a great party, but how do you follow it unless you're not already a wrestling person? So I think dual meets are a great entry point for a fan of said school. And we notice that we're not fans of wrestlers as much as, when it's a pyramid. Like the elite at our Olympic team have fewer fans to watch than the next thing. And that's not because it's a folk style freestyle debate. That's because people root for Iowa. People root for Penn State. People root for Oklahoma State. People root for Rutgers. They're going to gravitate to their school. Those kids change out every 4 years. Those fans stay the same. They're not going to, all right, well, where's, what's Anthony Ashton going to do now? Oh, we're going to go follow him here. They're not following these guys when they go to, nobody competed at Titan Mercury. Nobody competed at, the Army's an exception. You actually wrestle in the Army. But the point is there's no team concept where with a dual meet, it brings a team concept that the general sports fan, and I don't want to say new fans or reach out to new fans. What it does is it gets your alumni, we beat so-and-so. Simple versus, we're a tournament team. Like you lose the conversation in the minutia. And I'm a minutia guy. I am somebody who has to almost over explain things to the point people are like, all right, I'm done, JB. I got to go. So we have too much minutia in wrestling. A dual meet is simple. You're 10, my 10, high score wins. Done. You win. There's nuances to it. And we always want to I think the dual meet scoring needs to be changed anyway, but to make it in line with better team sports, the dual meet, as far as to the question about championships, do I think we need an NCAA championship to determine a dual meet? Yes. Does that mean I am in favor of dismantling the individual tournament? No. Correct. They are not the same thing. You're in Jersey, the classes for duels determine the team title. Are any fewer fans at Boardwalk Hall for the state tournament because there's no actual official team score? No, they go for the party. They go to follow their schools. I don't think the individual tournament, if the individual tournament, the NCAA tournament, loses one fan because they don't have a team score, I guarantee you there's a bunch more ready to take that ticket from it because it's a hard one to get. So that's another side point. That's supporting material. I think there should be a dual meet championship. Do I think this is where we're going to get to? Now, this is not the same national duels that we knew that was born in Virginia duels. So credit to Paycom, credit to everybody that's behind the scenes to get something like this. Yeah. And it's what it happens. I'm still actively involved with the Virginia duels. We can't get D1 teams to come anymore it used to be a thing. Oh, wow, John Graham was such an important guy in wrestling. He was the Olympic team leader. People would come, oh, I'm going to go support. I'd go fishing on John's boat. Now college athletics is a business. So I'm going to spend this much. I want to get this many matches. And I'm not going to name any schools here, but the last 4 or 5 years when we had D1s, the fight that me and tournament director Mike McCormick had to do with some of these coaches just to get them to wrestle each other. No, we want to wrestle this. You can't wrestle 2 weak sisters and not wrestle the other nationally ranked team. And you've got to that's the hardest thing about this. Yeah. That's where I sometimes think that some of these teams care more about their program than they do the entire sport. Well, all March is all that matters. You're 50 fans in the stands watching nobody wrestle each other that's any good. That's what's important. So you have to provide a product. And if you're ducking people, no disrespect to John Clark at Sacred Heart, for example, but people are lining up to wrestle Sacred Heart. They don't want to wrestle Missouri. So it's frustrating. So thank goodness the National Duels has the National Duels Invitational has the buy-in here. And that's what they had to do. To the Virginia Duels point, they have to pay them. People are not going to go unless they get something out of it, which back to that industry thing. Do we need to build that course? So maybe the Virginia Duel, which is a fundraiser, that's a fundraiser for our club. The days of trying to bring those teams in to get your kids recruited because it's good for the sport. Good for the sport doesn't mean anything anymore. Good for the wallet is what moves things. So credit to somebody that has the financial wherewithal to say, all right, here it is. Now, oh, you've been complaining about money? Here's money. Come get it. And you're like, there's a lot less excuses. So if for somehow we had each dual meet tournament had this type of pool, that would maybe draw it in, even covering your travel expenses would go a long way. We try to get teams from all over the place. We can't, we got to travel east every other year. Well, it's things like that. We don't necessarily do guarantee buy games as much in wrestling as they do in, football, but just the fact if this works, we saw it with Pat Pop, with the Frank Pop, with the Collegiate Duels, they were paying teams there. So there's 2 events now that are paying you to show up. Wrestling's going to have to pay for itself. People say, oh, well, the school should support this. We need to pay for our own sport if we want it. And if this is a model to get teams to come to events and create events, all right, there's a payout now that you can do it. I'm curious where it goes. And, you can say what you want about Penn State. You're doing what they want. Kale's going to do what Kale wants. That's his right as a coach. And how many national titles to speak for itself. So something clearly works there. He's not going to be forced into anything. Tom Brands is not going to be forced in anything. Before John retired, he wasn't going to be forced in anything. So those are the 3 ones that were always kind of in disagreement. Or where is it going to be in Iowa? There needs to be a banner. No. Why do you need cutting a pizza in half is not 2 pieces. Things. There's so many different arguments over the years about this. What's so hard about wrestling each other? Like, as a sports fan, I say this as a frustrated sports fan.
Yeah.
It's always about anytime, anywhere. Well, no, not until March. And everybody's going to be hurt. It's the wrestling in March is not about who's the best. It's who's the healthiest. It's things like that. So I get frustrated talking about a National Duels Championship because I think it would be great for our sport.
Yeah.
I do not think it would take anything away. But the bigger problem is, when do you do it? The schedule. I'm curious on how tennis, a lot of people don't know this. Tennis did a split season. Willie's been talking about a split season. We've been talking about duels one semester, tournaments one semester. I like the idea of getting away from the high school seasons with the postseason. Maybe if we keep it in the same iteration, move a tournament into April a bit, or perhaps, with a women's tournament, I want them to move into February so they're not overlapping our men's postseason. So there's a lot of moving parts. Where is it on the calendar? Again, there's a lot of questions about this. I'm excited to see it. I'll actually be there announcing with A.L. Hazlip, so I'll get to see it firsthand right there in Tulsa.
Fantastic.
So I'm really excited to see what this could lead to. I'm not going to say it's more than it is right now because they've been great to work with. Matt Serber and crew, we just had a conference call yesterday about run a show and things like that. They've got the crew at Oklahoma State, Detrick and those crew. They know how to run events down there. They're going to do a great job. So I'm not worried about the presentation. I'm worried about the buy-in from the teams. Like, is this worth it? And then what's going to happen? We need to do it like this because it's good for your team. We need to put it on a calendar somewhere and have it work. And if this blossoms into something the old National Duels couldn't be, that's nothing but beneficial for the sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I look at the New Jersey model just from a high school standpoint. You mentioned the boardwalk call comparison to the team states. Rutgers hosts the team state championships where you have these insane duels, right? And it's a bunch of classes. It's not just these two teams are the two best in New Jersey. Although it could be argued that the top two non-public schools, that's your de facto state championship for the teams, but everyone gets fired up for the group 2, which is there's 5 enrollment groups.
People gonna get mad at me. I could have worn my Del Barton shirt today, and I bro. My bad.
I would certainly and probably anticipate Del Barton and St. Joe's to run it back again in the state. Here, but
Cole literally gave me the shirt off his back in we were Roselle Park one day, and he goes, I was like, yeah, I'd love to get a Del Barton shirt. He took it off and gave it to me. So,
he's like, here you go. You wanted a shirt? Here you go.
A mountain in Austria together. So I mean, it's or Germany, right on the border. Anyway, that's another story entirely. Shout out.
I love it. And the calendar to me for Jersey works. The whole team season, dual meet season leads to a team championship. Then all of a sudden, boom, you flip the switch 2 weeks later, individual postseason starts with districts, regions, and states. But I know college is different. And again, you have semesters.
You don't see quads. You don't see quads in Division I. You see them in D3 and D2 all the time. You don't see them in D1. Yeah. And I think it's that despair. I mean, it is the higher level athlete where, when, a bull hitting a bull head on is, the recovery time for the bulls is a lot different than like two cats hitting each other head on. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe not be a great comparison. Sorry, D3 guy. I love D3. You know that. So I'm just saying it maybe just that, you're going to get a hammer every single time out in Division I typically, because that's the cream of the crop. So I guess recovery times, there's sports science about this, I guess. I guess that's why teams are wrestling, 10 duels and you're going into the postseason with 15, 20 matches instead of going into 40 like you used to.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, I mean, I'm looking at some of these high school records for these kids. They're wrestling 45, 50 matches by the time they get to the end of the state tournament. And the top college guys, if they're winning a national title, it's about, 17 to 25 matches by the time they win a title. So you mentioned D3. Okay, I wanted to actually get to that. I, as a big wrestling fan, if I catch a good D2, D3 duel, maybe I'll watch it, catch some highlights, read into it. But you're obviously a wrestling encyclopedia at this point, at this stage of your career. So is there anything D2/D3 related that wrestling fans that maybe haven't dipped their toes in that water before, what should they be looking out for this year? I could say from firsthand experience at the All-Star Classic, the D2, D3 match might have been the most exciting of the night anyway.
Yeah, and you had the guy from West Liberty pick up that win over Roanoke. Roanoke College is a relatively brand new program. Nate Yetzer's done a good job there. He had built the program at Ferrum before. Roanoke College is in Salem, Virginia, which is because Salem and Roanoke abut to each other. It is across the street from my favorite restaurant in Southwest Virginia. So a shout out to Mac and Bob's in Salem, right across the street from campus. I came in to do a tech match a couple years ago when I was still doing the show with them. And I'm at lunch with Nate and his assistant Blake. We're sitting there, we're having at Mac and Bob's, and I had to Stromboli. It's just like that's where we went after our high school state tournament was over, because it was on the other side of the state. We'd all go to Mac and Bob's. Allison Schwab used to work there in high school. So
get out of here.
This is a place that's uniquely tied to wrestling for me. So seeing Mark Samuel win a national championship last year, it was against a guy who was also a Maroon. It was the University of Chicago. So you had Maroon versus Maroon in the finals. They're both schools are nicknamed the Maroons, which is again that weird. My brain works in funny ways. Like I pointed that out. I was like, oh, cool. And I remember telling Matt Gentry about it. He goes, I never even realized that. Well, your color was a cardinal in college. You should be aware of these colored things, Matt. But we go to the D2 and D3s that it's, again, if you're a sports fan and you like wrestling, take the Augsburg, Wartburg, and props to Lonnie Morris and Johnson Wales for breaking through last year with the it wasn't an outright Berg streak breaker, but they got a national title. They get the host up in Providence. There is the wildness of the Division III tournament. A lot of these kids, they go out there, they're again, these are usually private liberal arts colleges or small state schools, and they're out there because they love the sport. It's not a bunch of guys hiding out in D1. Now you get your transfer that's in a second chance or something like that, or somebody that just like, we look at, I remember AJ Kowal from, where did he go? I think it was Stevens Institute, Ohio kid, Fargo finalist. Like, he went D3 because his academics, he wanted to do this and he wanted to still wrestle and enjoy himself and have a academic life, and then also it not be a job. So I love the fact that the kids that are good kids that choose D3 because they want, they might be a room guy or they might be a starter. They could be a 2-year starter and go 1-2 at nationals and bust. Hey, give it a shot. You have and now with the transfers, like we said, you have an opportunity to change your scenery in that regard. But I love D3 because it's unpredictable. Last year, there was a kid, Robbie Bates from North Central. Twice in his career, he knocked off the number 1 seed in the first round at the NCAA championships. Twice in his career, he did this. What in the world? Like seriously, in 1 year, it cost Wabash national title. They lost to Wartburg by point. The Wabash.
We don't see that. Yeah, we don't see that at the D1 level.
They seed 12 at D3, but it's like, it was a 12 or 8. I think they still seed 8. It may be 12. It's just it all runs together now.
Yeah.
The brackets are now up to 18. Now they're 21. But we have unpredictable things. A 1 seed gets beat in the first round almost every year at nationals. I've been going since 2009. I think there's only been 2 years in that stretch the 1 seed hasn't gotten beaten. Last couple years, it's been the heavyweight. 1 year it was in lacrosse. It was the very last match of that quarterfinal, the first round. I think it was a kid from York College. It was York or Mount Union that was involved in the match. I think it was the Mount Union kid upset the 1 seed. It might have been, I think it was Derek Hessen beat Tom Borriesa, if I can recall correctly. But it was maybe it's Concordia. Again, all this stuff runs together. But that's the excitement. We love when Maryland, Baltimore County beats Virginia in basketball. We love it when St. Peter's, let's talk, when they make the run. People love that stuff. D3 wrestling has that stuff because you've got kids that are out there and they don't care if that's a Wartburg and Augsburg or Johnson Wales. They don't care. They're going to go out there and they're going to win. And then when you get the teams, the students and the fans that come to the D3s, they're on top of the action. They bring buses of people. Luther has a chant. UW Whitewater has a chant. Lacrosse, Wartburg, Augsburg, they've all got these core groups. The teams out east, Messiah always brings a good group. Wilkes is a solid contender with their fan base every single year. So you get a lot of that energy and action. Johnson Wales did a great job hosting. Their place was wild last year. So from a purity standpoint, from a wrestling standpoint, it's amazing. And I wish we as wrestling fans would pay more attention to that from a wrestling standpoint. I don't want to hear that, it's not good wrestling argument. Well, you watch high school wrestling, that's really not good wrestling. No,
That's a good
I don't
point.
want to hear I only want to watch the best. Then guess what? You're watching the Olympics once every 4 years.
Yep.
Oh, you're watching one event a year, maybe 2. So I wish we were a little bit more open. And again, we're following teams. We're not following kids. Follow those kids from your high school, where they're going. Are they going to, Kane just started a program. They're going to go down the street and wrestle there, or are they going to Del Val? Are they going to Centenary? Are they going to follow those kids at those schools? That's an extra body in the stands for them. That's an extra parent. So that grows wrestling. Because again, I say this a lot as a speaking point. Those are where your high school coaches are coming from. I've always said that Brent Metcalf's not going to be your high school coach. It's going to be the guy that wrestled at Centenary. It's going to be the guy that wrestled at Gettysburg. Those are the guys that are. It's in Iowa. It's going to be your Buena Vista guys. It's going to be your Simpson guys. Those are the Those are the kids that love wrestling. They're the ones who are going to give back to the sport. They're going to teach your kids. Those programs are vital to the health of college wrestling. D2. I announced at St. Cloud State wrestling and hockey. I had to switch my hats up. I realized I was wearing a hockey hat to start, and I'm on a wrestling show, so I had to give my home program in D2. A little bit more FaceTime there, but just D2, D3, NAI. It's so exciting. I don't watch a lot of junior colleges. We don't have that many close to me here. I've only been to one junior college nationals. I know there's pockets where it's really big, but those are opportunities for our kids to compete at the next level, to learn the sport, to give back to the sport later in life. And I feel like those programs, while they don't sell the tickets and they don't get the headlines within our niche community, those are every bit as important. Like Rose State just added men's and women's wrestling. They had a program on the men's side way back in the day. That's another program where over 400 new programs in the last 25 years. That's good. We need to celebrate each and every new program. So there's my soapbox when you just lead into a Division III question.
Hey, I appreciate especially the give back part where, the kids that go to the Stevens, the Centenaries, they're the ones who are coming back to their local high schools in Jersey, Pennsylvania, wherever they end up going or go back to. They're the ones who are going to be your assistant coaches or head coaches and teach the kids and the next generation of wrestlers. And I can say that just from having broadcasted at Stevens Institute a handful of years ago for their D3 dual meets. And I'm like, this is still high quality stuff. Let's not forget, it's still college wrestling. A couple more for you, Jason. Then we'll hit some rapid fire. And again, I appreciate your time this morning. The National Wrestling Hall of Fame just announced their 2026 class. Distinguished members, of course, the headline by Ben Askren. Tervel Delagnev obviously is in as well. But this is to me, a very deep class. I mean, when is it not? Because it's the Hall of Fame, obviously. But what did you make of this year's class with the distinguished members, obviously the Outstanding American honoree, And of course, we always have to throw out the Medal of Courage, and of course the award for the officials as well. What'd you make of this year's class?
Makes me feel like I'm getting older, that people younger than me are going in as distinguished members. That's happening now, and I mentioned Tervel and I actually share the same anniversary, not to each other. We were both married the same day back in 2010. So every year on my anniversary, I text Tervel, be like, happy anniversary. So
it's fantastic. The connections never stop.
Him and Pat Tossi, also my former boss at the NWCA, who's now working in high school athletics at Penn Manor in Pennsylvania. We all have the same anniversary. So we kind of joke about that. Looking at the class, of course, Ben, it's just so remarkable to see him getting back to his old self. Now, granted, physically, we know there's a long way to go, but Ben's been on the ballot for a couple years, and it's the point where the guy changed wrestling, and he's got 4 finalist appearances and made an Olympic team. When you stack up his credentials, there are people that are in the hall that are probably or that are not in the hall that have maybe better stats in terms of like, okay, but what did Ben mean to college wrestling when he came through? It changed things. I mean, his personality, his fun-loving attitude, but also his edgy snark as well. Just as a personality when we needed a personality. He was in a dark time for USA Wrestling when it came to the freestyle world. I mean, we had Henry, and that was it until Mr. Burroughs came along. And Ben really was somebody that gravitated. People were drawn to Ben because he didn't look like an athlete, and he's out there pinning people with this big giant fro. And he's a disc golfer. Me and him have played disc. It's been a long time, but we used to play disc at tournaments when we run into each other. Tervel. Now, I brought this up to Jack Carnifex from the Hall of Fame. I'm sitting here looking at Tervel, who's a 4-time Division II All-American, 2-time national champion. One of those titles, he was stocked by a guy that eventually made a world team, Les Sigmund, who wrestled at Nebraska Omaha. So we look at Tervel, and I have to break this down, but since the dissolution of Division II and Division III guys going into the Hall of Fame, into the Division I championships, I believe, now I have to fact check this. I'm pretty sure that I've mostly fact checked it. But in this, he's the first modern era, and I say that post Hasselrig. So when they stopped the Hasselrig rule, whatever, Division II athlete that is in the Hall of Fame. We've had the old Bakersfield guys, the old Cal Poly guys, Northern Iowa when they were college division, air quotes Division II. Those that old era of college Division II. That there's a bunch of those guys, but a modern era Division II wrestler. I believe he's the first in that since they changed over in those early 90s there, late 80s, early 90s. So Tervel wrestled Nebraska Kearney for a guy named Mark Bauer, who's the AD. One thing I remember talking to Mark Bauer about Tervel, and Tervel was only 3rd in the state as a high school senior. I think he came out and wrestled 184 as a redshirt. It was not a heavyweight. And Mark Bauer said, what I tell recruits is I can give you everything in your college experience except a Division I national championship. Tervel was in the All-Star Classic. Tervel won the Midlands. Tervel was everywhere. So credit to, and he said, those guys want to transfer and find somewhere else. He's, Pat Pecora was the same way at Pitt Johnstown when Jody Strittmatter left. If you want something better, I'm going to help you get there. So Tervel and Ben, being of my generation, to speak, they're younger than me, but I remember Tervel at I think it was the 08 trials. I'm like, ooh, that guy's gonna be real good in freestyle. And sure enough, and he eventually got his Olympic medal, which kind of sucks because it was delayed gratification. Okay, you get it now, but you lost 10 years of being able to celebrate that and monetize that and make your life better because of what goes with Olympic medal. Leroy Smith, I didn't know him as a head coach. I knew he was at Arizona State right when I was breaking in to covering college wrestling. But since then, he's been at the helm at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Stillwater in June that honors weekend. I tell you what, as a wrestling fan, not just, I do a lot of interviews down there, but sometimes I'm just like, I'm putting the microphone away. I'm just going to sit here and have a glass of wine with John W. I'm just going to name drop just for a moment to give you an example. And anybody can do that on that Friday night. You go and you meet, the honors, the plaque unveiling, Sandy's on the microphone, reading these things off. There are people that are not around wrestling, but they're family members. They can invite, their eyes get so big. And since the renovation, the hall is beautiful. They swap out exhibits for teams that come in. They have these interactive displays, the hall in Stillwater. And I'll say this, there's not, 40, 50,000 or how many students are at Oklahoma State. They're not on campus at the time, so you're not overrun by college kids if you're of the older. But Stillwater, it's in June. It's quiet. It's a wrestling town. It's orange. The dirt's even orange or red dirt, So, seeing Leroy go in, I think he's kind of turned down the opportunity to be nominated because he's in charge of this thing. Wow. He deserves it. I mean, his credentials are also great as a wrestler.
Yeah.
He's got a world silver. He's got some national titles, and he's been serving the sport of wrestling for 20 some years now at the Hall. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. He's gracious, so gracious of his time, and him and Jack are doing great at the Hall of Fame, and their staff do great. And then so Shannon Williams Yancey, mm-hmm. 4-time world silver in an era where women's wrestling was growing. When you say the word trailblazer, it gets thrown out a lot. Mm-hmm. This woman was a trailblazer, and I never saw Shannon wrestle. I think I've met her once. Like that's her era predates me even ever watching wrestling. And you go through the credentials and you hear Gary Abbott speak about what Shannon Williams and Tricia Saunders meant for women's wrestling at a time nobody wanted it and nobody was coaching it. Like, guys like Joe Corso, take the reins. Gary Abbott gets put on it to cover it under USA Wrestling. Shannon Williams, without Shannon Williams, we don't have Kennedy Blades. We don't have Helen. Without women like that, we don't have Olympic heroes. So anytime a woman goes in as a distinguished member, it is such a big thing for wrestling. Now, I don't know Michael Nardati very well. I didn't know who Pat Morrissey was until I was like, that's the guy that rode across the Pacific. Didn't know he's a wrestler, Cal Poly guy. So those two, the Medal of Courage is such an interesting thing because you got people that they overcome odds. It's crazy. Last year Outstanding American was Terry Davis, the guy who wrote Vision Quest. You want to talk about the movie had a lot of an impact, but the movie was based on a book. And I don't know a single wrestler that's not been impacted by Vision Quest one way or another. Right. So it was great for Terry to get in last year. Jim Porter has been everywhere. You may not know him by name, but you will see him big, very tall guy, always got the military kind of crew cut, big beard, glasses, and has an opinion on everything. You will, and I'll say he's hit me up with the KT tape. He's bandaged up my knee or foot here and there when I'd like roll an ankle or something. Like, Doc, he's just everywhere, and he knows he's been around forever. Vegas guy's been around, and then Zach Arrett, he's a Golden Whistle Award winner. Mm-hmm. His dad was a high level international official. Zach's refereed the Olympics, and this is a guy even again of my age, just shows that you can put a lifetime into this sport when you start young. He was like, I remember calling my friends in the Minnesota chapter when they put people in for lifetime service at the state chapters, like, hey, who was the youngest guy to go in? And they're like usually in their 60s or 70s. I went in the Virginia chapter, for example, at 36, 37. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a reach. But Zach's been around so long and he started so young. So it's like there's opportunities in wrestling. Yeah. To do the biggest events, to be on the world stage, even if you're not a Jax Forrest or you're not that high level Jordan Burroughs, you could be high level at something other than actual wrestling around wrestling. So Zach's a salt of the earth guy. He's also, you want to talk about somebody that's also very gracious of their time. Whenever I have an issue or a question about international rules interpretations, it's him or Sammy Julian. Mm-hmm. They're my texts. So and it's been good. Zach's been a great mentor to young officials. So this is a really good class. And like I said, what I love about it is the weekend itself. Mm-hmm. Hall of Fame Honors Weekend. And they're not paying me to say this either. I go down, it's on my own dime. I go down, I have there's some places in town I like to see. Last year when Terry Steiner went in, you had his whole women's team, like his Trailblazers and such. They were there. Their people were all around, just going having we're gonna have a little dinner at this wine place, or we're gonna go over here, and we're gonna it's fellowship, and you get to be when you're around people when there's no tournaments. You get to see who they really are. Mm-hmm. You get to see them amped up, dialed to 11 when you're trying to have a conversation with, say, two coaches that are going to rip each other's heads off mat side. You get them next to each other. I mean, I'm sitting there. I remember one year there's Dan Gable talking to John Smith, having a conversation over a glass of wine, and then there's some just random fan coming over, just having a great conversation, and they're open and they're so approachable. So you want to meet your heroes in a way to really get some quality time. Yeah, they're going to be busy. Honors Weekend it really is the way to do it. So congratulations. I love the weekend so much. And this is a great class to go in. They've all, again, I can't speak for the two that I don't know personally, but the three I don't know personally. So it's a great class from my perspective.
Yeah, the class, it seems like every year it just keeps getting better and better because you find new ways to honor these people that have made a huge impact on the sport. So I liked it, especially the fact that it was headlined by Ben. And if you saw that video that I saw yesterday as well, 4 months ago he was on his deathbed, and then yesterday he's lacing up his new Ruta shoes and he's getting drilling back in. So it just goes to show you that guys like that deserve this type of honoree. So I will give you one more question before we hit the rapid fire. And you actually shot me this text yesterday, which was a new broadcasting tool you're working on. And I wanted to give you the floor on this, on how this works, for whether it's for you, for on-air people. What is this new broadcasting tool that you're coming up with right now?
So this actually starts with hockey, believe it or not. So when I'm announcing hockey at St. Cloud State, I am right between the penalty boxes. So I'm right on the ice. And I am somebody that, I had sheets. Okay, referee, there's a penalty. Referee, overhead mic, St. Cloud State penalty, number 14, Zach Okabe, 2 minutes for hooking. So I'll write that down. You can't really hear it. Then once the puck drops start, repeat the penalty. And I've got the time. You look up the board, you got to reverse engineer the time, because it's like you announce if it's 15 minutes to go on the clock, you're like 5 minutes in period one.
Yep.
So I'm sitting there, it's like, okay, how do I do it? And the goal calls, that was the one that was struggling, because the call comes from upstairs, the official scorekeepers. The referee most of the time will skate over and be like 2-3 and do a 2-3. You're like, okay, 23 scored. So you have that. So you write it down, and then you have the line chart, and the line charts aren't in numerical order. They're based on the line. So if you know anything about hockey, it's like first line, second line, third line, fourth line, then your D pairings, and then your goalies. So they have, all of them have, the stats for the season. So you're looking at, okay, how many goals? I'm using Okabe because he was my favorite player that I got to announce. Okay. So I'm sitting there writing it out. Okay, I got that. And then you got to write it down. So by the time the play starts, the momentum is gone. And then you got to find the right time when we have the puck to be like, Husky goals scored. So I'm like, how can I do this better? So Jared Ronsky, who's the PA announcer for like everything in DC, he does the Hershey Bears. He has this tool that he had with macros in Excel. This old, it was like a portal where you entered it and it would display. I've got a Mac. I haven't used macros on Excel since probably 9th grade. So I couldn't get this thing to work. I'm like, you know what? Every time you copy a cell, paste cell, macros are very funny. So I'm like, you know what? I've done a lot with formulas in Google Sheets and being able to I make these massive spreadsheets for NCAAs and world championships and the Olympics that I care. And I'm pulling in lookups from other files to make sure that I'm not asking the same name. So it really started from, just simply learning what an X lookup and V lookup and queries and stuff were. So I've got that. And I was like, all right, let me try this. So I built a sheet and I look on this side. I was like, well, I can't get Jared's thing to work. I think I can do something similar in Google Sheets. So I sit there and I enter it, and I've got the rosters all preloaded for the season and the teams. Each game, I just update the number of goals each person has. It has a tab. I name the tab. I just change a code. And then so when I enter 14 and the call or text comes from up there, 14 from 23 and 20, 14, 23, 20. Names are on my screen. Already got the pronunciations on there. And as soon as we do a chant after we score, and it's like, Civ, you suck. And then they do that 3 times. And then it goes, Civ, 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 Civ. And once they do that, puck drops, Husky goal scored. And you just hit that momentum. So I'm like, I'm doing the PWL whenever I'm not sure when you're going to release this, but I'm doing the PWL remotely for the Russian thing on Saturday. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure that out. So I'm like, well, let me do that so I started building this thing with the bios that I had the international. I have the entire international results database. I'm like, all right, can I do some lookups here and put this here? And then on that hockey sheet, I had a number that I changed that number and I have a game list. So I hit the number 2, that's going to be St. Thomas. I hit 3, it's going to switch to Bemidji, and all the information, it's going to pull that. So I built all this thing. I can do this for wrestling. So what I did, I built a kind of a test sheet to use tomorrow live. And then I'm like, I got all these stats that I have, the Pirate sends this email out. I keep a lot of stuff for the preview guy. The end year's like, wonder if I could build something live for wrestling. So actually it all started like, let's see, what's today? Friday, we record this. Well, I want to say Wednesday night, Thursday morning. And I'm just working on it. I'll say I did use my fair share of ChatGPT to get some of the coding. It's like, hey, I have this in this column, this in this column, this in this column. I'm going to run this here. How can I tweak it? And it gives me like, oh, so basically I have the idea of what I wanted to do. I know how the rudimentary, and I can even point out, it's like, no, I don't want you to go there. You're routing this wrong. It's, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. You tell ChatGPT they're wrong. They always say you're right. It's weird. So I built it and I'm sitting there like, all right, let's try drop down. So now I've got to the point where I can have a head-to-head display. You can pick a wrestler from a drop down based on your weight class at the top. It works kind of like WrestleStat in some ways, where you pick the weight class and then it loads the names. And then it has, all their bio information. Then I've loaded all the records from the last 4 years that I have, because I have the results and records going back in spreadsheets back to 2020, 22 season. So AJ Ferrari, sorry, your championship year is not in my stats because I don't have them, but he's probably one of the outliers of that year. So I have all that right there. That way you just change it if it's like, okay, all that high school stuff that you scroll through. I'm working on the high school stuff right now. So the idea is to have it on a screen. So if I'm announcing an event, all right, well, new match. Okay. And so I do the preview guide. Well, versus scrolling through the preview guide or scrolling through the preview guide, it's all right there. So the idea is to eventually develop this to where me, Hazard, AL can use it. And if it's good enough for broadcast, I showed a screenshot to Sparks. He goes, I can't repeat what he said via text on what he thought about it, but it's just something I think that I've got the data. I'm always about trying to make a system that makes me more efficient, because the encyclopedia brain thing, the mind thing, like that stuff gets thrown around. I don't know that stuff off the top of my head, but I know I've logged it and I know where to find it. So now my recall is quicker because it's just boom, it's right there. How do you have all that? It's just right there. I've logged it and compiled it and created a system that's like, all right. And this isn't even like alpha version. This is like ID. I mean, this thing is 2 days old. And I'm going to put the PWL one into place tomorrow.
I like that.
The wrestling looks a little different. And that one, it's got your placements from the international events. So I've got senior worlds and Olympics, continentals, and then the age group stuff. That's really all you need, because you just need some background. I had the age. That's all they are. I even have a difference in, Nick Lee's going to be, it's 3 days, 3 day age difference from the guy he's going to be wrestling. And I was like, oh, that from a broadcasting standpoint, that's a good stat to have. It's like, that's cool. 21, he's 27 and he's 27. They're actually only 3 days apart, or largest age gap. Oh, they're 10 years apart. Have that stuff at the ready on screen versus like getting an idea. So just trying to build these little sheets and systems that make mainly me more efficient. And if people I know can get some benefit out of it, like the preview guide started as just something for me to figure out. Now that's become something fans like. It's actually been a decent moneymaker for me. It's worth the time. And, like I said, just putting those things together, I got to give credit to the Pirate, Britt Malinsky, who's, he's been doing these results sheets. He emails them. I know Spays mentioned them, and the Flow guys have mentioned, like, a lot of the results are generated on that email. So, and full disclosure, I do pay him for the use of those numbers. So it's not like I'm taking it from him and just doing something with it. No, I pay Britt an annual licensing fee to use that stuff, even though I think he sends it to everybody for free. But I appreciate what that data means. So, and it's been able to kind of create my workflow and everything and fact check. And I know he's not going to put anything in there that's not correct. So, just building those systems and putting those things into place to make me better at what I do, which leads to quicker calls, which leads to more attentive announcing, which leads to a better production value, which leads to happier tournament directors, which leads to better gigs or more gigs or return gigs. All those things come into play, because I never want to be unprepared, because I do PA. I don't know if I'll be able to do Little Rock at all this year schedule because of the schedule, but Augsburg at home, St. Cloud at home, I do the NCAA events. Sometimes I'll do the national duels, D3 stuff, on tape delay. And it's, just having all that stuff at the ready just makes you so much better in terms of your preparation. So it's a heavy tool. I don't, whether it's going to be out to the masses this year, I got to tweak some things. Whether or not that gets monetized, I don't know. You're a broadcaster. What would you pay for something like that, Nick? I'm kind of interested now.
Let's see. Can I do the trial run as you're doing? I mean, it looks like a pretty efficient system, especially for an in-arena gig. It only makes you more efficient. It keeps the action flowing. It keeps the energy flowing, and then ultimately goes back to the fans, and they're just like, "Oh my god, I didn't know that," or like, "Oh my god, like let's yell because this is awesome." You know what I mean? So I think it eventually could translate to something where it's very efficiently used on air, rather than me just scrambling through my printed out handwritten notes or typed out notes, or going to WrestleStat or going to this website or that website where it's like, oh yeah, here's this tidbit about this wrestler from 4 years ago when he's a freshman on campus. So I think that's the ultimate goal with that tool, and I'm very interested to see how it grows when you put it into practice, and eventually, for all we know, we'll see it in Cleveland in March, and then all of a sudden,
hard
you're like,
part is, I've got databases for Fargo. I've got databases from every high school state place winner going back to 2012 for every single state, boys and girls. So some of it is, a lot of the lookups. It's like there's not an independent ID for every single one. So it's not like matching up an ID. Like there was one today, like an Air Force kid, like it's EJ Balanchik, like it's E period, J period in the high school side. Well, on the track wrestling roster, the official roster, it's EJ, no period. So there's going to be some gaps. And I remember last year when I was looking at it, I didn't catch this till after the fact, that Josh Barr, crap. In my seat, I had high school state titles as a 0 because he's Joshua Barr in the results, because again, they're pulling. So I've got to go back and still clean that stuff up. And there was a kid from the Citadel. I emailed Luke Welsh this year, and it was like, hey, is it Gunner with an A or Gunner with an E? I think that's the kid I was talking about. He goes, because in the high school state tournament results in South Carolina, it's both ways in different years.
Oh my God.
And then the Citadel had it, they had it one way, their track wrestling profile had it another. And I'm like, so that's what I get into sometimes. So I got to say it's probably about 91%, 95% accurate given the amount. I mean, there's 134,000 lines of names just from high school placers from 2016 to now. That's the high school age. So I'm trying to tie the high school credentials in, because what do? If they're a Jersey guy, so-and-so, Del Barton was third as a freshman at 132. All that's going to be right there. I'm just working through it. It's eventually going to happen. So it's eventually going to happen.
Just like the sport itself, we work through it. Jason Bryant with me here on On3 Wrestling. Jason, I appreciate your time, and we'll finish off here with some rapid fire questions. I got a couple for you. Here we go. Favorite venue? I'm not even going to give you a Division I. I'm not even going to give you college, high school, World and Olympic stuff. That you've been all over the globe when it comes to wrestling. Favorite venue?
All right, that's the thing. I'm into the minutia. You mean like wrestling arena for wrestling, or just general venue in itself?
Let's go with the minutia. Let's go with the wrestling atmosphere.
Carver. Next
Easy.
topic.
Easy.
I mean,
it's easily done.
I got to announce the Iowa State duel last year, and I never thought I'd be able to announce an Iowa duel meet. And I had that opportunity, and oh my goodness! And I was there for the Twitter duel when when Penn State wrestled Iowa out there. It's iconic. Nothing. Yeah. I mean, I've been in Gallagher. I was at Rec Hall pre-Kale. I haven't been at the BJC since there, but like Carver, that's Carver. Next topic.
Carver it is. The duel you're looking forward to the most this year doesn't have to be limited to D1, obviously, as we got into the D2, D3 conversation as well.
Well, Augsburg-Wartburg is always on one watch. Johnson and Wales is coming out to wrestle Augsburg in 2 weeks. So that's one from the D2 side. In Husky land, we're kind of rebuilding this year, starting year preseason 8, but they've got Kearney coming in on December 12th. So that's a big one, at least for local. West Liberty and UPJ wrestled a knockdown drag out to start the year last night. So that'd be one. But Iowa State's always fun, because when you get Dresser and Brands jawing at each other, it's always fun. Those are the ones that I look at, and when the national duels start hitting, you sit back. I like to see how it unfolds versus anticipate. So that's kind of one of the things I look for the most is like what's going to be the best duel that I watch, because sometimes if you prepare for something, it can be a letdown. It's when you're surprised by something, that's great. I watch as much wrestling as I can. I mean, I was dialed into Iowa Bellarmine last night, so it's like there's a stream on. I'm watching Bridgewater State, Plymouth State some of these times. So I can't say that there's one Division I duel that I'm looking forward to, because there's just you don't know what you don't know, I guess is an easy cop out to that rapid fire question.
That's all right. It's an answer. What was more memorable for you, the Olympics in Paris last year or Worlds this year?
Olympics, Paris.
Easy. All right, I'll leave.
Yeah, that one. I'll give you a little side story. My wife was with me for there, so she doesn't come to a lot of events. We got young kids, so the opportunity to go to a wrestling event and sit in the stands for 3 days and watch me work, and then maybe me come back to the hotel and be grumpy or tired. That's not fun. I've been married 15 years. My wife still tells me, I still like you. I still want to spend time with you. So maybe as the kids get old, but she got to come out the last day, and then we spent a week in Munich. Again, Stoll was in the trip. My best man at my wedding, Nate Shy, lives up in Westfield. We had a crew there. Nick Frost out from Arizona State. was one of our old guys from Virginia back in the day. So we had a good crew. Anytime you get to say "Please Rise" to the national anthem of the United States of America, it's good. We got to do it with Sarah. We got to do it with the meet. So those are great things. So the Olympics is just so special. It's the Worlds are great. Worlds are fantastic. I've been to every World Championship since 2007. I didn't go to the Olympics in 8, but they're on out, not counting the non-Olympic Worlds, but I've been to every one of those. And my first one was 03. And the Worlds are special. The Olympics are just something else. That's life. Those are life changers there.
Yeah.
When you see these countries, you got a guy from Tajikistan, stuff like that, winning a medal, life's changed forever. So Paris, the Olympics, it was also, again, it was also the first regular issue type of Olympics I got to do. Rio was weird because we had a 3-person setup. It was my first one. I really didn't know what to do out of the chute. Tokyo was weird because there was nobody there.
Right.
And then Paris was just awesome. The Parisians Worlds in 17 did a great job. The Parisians did great, minus the cigarette smoke.
Yeah, love it. And I'll leave you here with this one. I've asked a couple coaches this already, and I can kind of tell where everyone's thinking, but I wonder if your thinking is the same. For the Division I NCAA Wrestling Championships, your dream location for that tournament, those 3 days in March?
Miami. Why not the beach?
I was down there a couple years Florida, ago. It's the Carolinas. It's Florida. I just asked Coach Bono over at Wisconsin. He said Florida. I'm like, I'm with you.
Yeah, but I was down there a couple years ago. Actually, probably closer to 10 years ago now, because I remember watching a national duels with Oklahoma State and Penn State at my buddy. It was Nate's house when he lived in Miami, and we're at South Beach. I think we're at the Clevelander having a cigar, and I'm just looking around. I was like, wrestling people would destroy this place, like in a way, like they would be just everywhere. And I'm like, why don't we have things? He's like, why don't we have things here? I was like, they don't bid. Like, I'm sure people would love Vegas, but Vegas is what Vegas is. I think it needs to go back to New York at least once every 10 years or something. The Garden was special. Yeah, it was. Again, wrestling people didn't like it as much, probably because you could go next door, nobody knows a wrestling tournament's going on. That doesn't happen in Des Moines. That won't happen in Cleveland. Yeah. You didn't have it. Kansas City was strong, very strong. Loved Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City to me, 24 was great.
And you could get off 3-4 blocks away and be quiet and still have a great time. You didn't have. It wasn't the mob of people. You could actually get seated if you just had some great wings there, had some good brewery. Like, again, I'd love to go to Miami. It's not a place where my Midwestern folk can get in the RV, drive, and park in the parking lot. That's a long trip. So why not someplace warm?
Yeah, I don't know what we're waiting for. And it's funny you brought up MSG. That was actually my first tournament as a media member back in 2016. That was my student days. That was the first. That was the first year we broadcasted any type of wrestling on our student radio station up in Rutgers. And I said, hey, let's just do the tournament. It's right in our backyard. Well, technically up north in our backyard, but I said, let's go do it. And sure enough, that's what got me hooked on college wrestling and covering it to these days. So Miami would be great. Anywhere in Florida, just let me know. I'll take a quick flight from AC down here.
What about New Orleans? Put it like right around New Orleans people might not come back from that trip.
If you have I think people will start booking in advance, do a little Mardi Gras / NCAAs back to back right there. I think we'll have to cancel the next season for recovery purposes.
Yeah, I mean LA might be interesting. I'm just thinking, just again from just geographic standpoints. First of all, I love it in the Central Time Zone because that means we're not starting the finals at 8.
Good point.
So when that day is over and our work day is over, it's 10:30, not 11:30.
Yeah, big difference.
A lot of difference when you get to catch up with I don't get to catch up with my friends. I get there Tuesday night. I see a couple people that come in Tuesday night. Wednesday, I'm kind of low key because I got to, I can't get loud. I lose my voice not from announcing. I lose my voice from everything after.
Yes, that's correct. I'm with you on that.
Conversation we're having, I will do with anybody around the country at any time, at any place, whether it's the tap room, a restaurant, the sidewalk. Like, I will talk wrestling, and that's how I lose my voice, is just talking when I don't have to talk. When you're being paid to talk, you got to keep your voice. So 9-day trips at World Championships, I don't do a lot of talking when we're done. So NCAA, that's the heavy load. You leave everything. You can't hold anything back, because Dan Fouts, the water boy. You throw that out there. You just I don't do anything the week after nationals. I went to Hawaii last year. I'm like, don't talk to me. So
let me just sit here.
I'd love to see these places bid for it and change it up too, though.
Yeah,
I do. I like Kansas City. I think MSG is great. I'd be curious if Dylan can ever land him in Newark. because that's a awesome building. Prudential Center's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Love
a good
doing it.
place. I don't want to say it's a weird location, but I mean, at least for me, it's close. It's Jersey. But
That
it's a
beer
weird,
garden would run out of beer.
it probably would. I think they need to start constructing a second one just in preparation for
Yeah.
for a 5-year bid
The
from now.
Reds next door would just be they're done.
Well, we'll see where it ends up. Hopefully, someplace warmer than Cleveland or St. Louis as we have in the upcoming seasons. And it's going back to Minnesota, so I'm interested to see.
I'm excited for that. I had this.
Yeah,
I had this
actually, real
bar.
quick. I mean, that was the thing in 2020 before the tournament got canceled. It's going to be back. Like, they're going to try the football stadium thing again. What do you make of that?
Okay, so I'm gonna get the negative Nancy's out of the way first. Okay, sorry, your view is going to be not as great as the tickets that you've been able to hold on to for the last
It's a football
30 years.
stadium.
Okay. That has prevented, the fact that kids can't get tickets. Back in the day when you started going, tickets were like $10. They were on campus. Of course, you became hooked and you started buying. And when you got older, you had more discretionary income. And then you kept those seats. That fan base is actually getting older. The NCAA ticket data tells you that. We need our fan base to get younger. Everybody that's going to look forward to these, the kids that are like watching Jax and Bo and these guys wrestle in high school, they're going to be not that far behind them in age. And they'll be like, they're going to be in college. They're going to be like coming into college when they're seniors and stuff. It's like, I want to go watch them wrestle at nationals, and they're not going to be able to afford it. Tickets right now. I was looking at Minnesota Wild tickets for, they're, just a simple NHL game is like maybe $100 minimum. And that's if it's not the resale. So the opportunity for and Anthony Holman, when he was still leading charge on this, the opportunity for those $20 single session tickets. Yeah, they'll be upper deck. How many of you really go? You go to watch your guys, but you're not watching 8 mats at one time anyway. You're picking and choosing. You're watching up on the video board. Oh, I can't see that. There's the replay. You've got track on your phone. You've got, you're distracted. Don't tell me you're focusing on 8 matches intently the entire time, because you're not. This. I have not yet been into US Bank Stadium because I'm not a Vikings fan, but pictures I've seen, everybody's been in there. There's a giant, one of the biggest indoor video boards ever. So you're going to have no problem seeing things. The fact that you're going to open the door for to double your fan base at one event and get them to experience all that is great about the sport of wrestling and the atmosphere. It is like our own Mardi Gras. We get 3 days to reconvene, tell stories. And now you get to tell, remember that time in Nationals? Now you get twice as many people to get to tell those stories. Yeah. And there's somebody that's always going to remember their first trip to the NCAAs. And if that's right, an opportunity for US Bank Stadium to just open that door for 20 to 25,000 more first-time attendees. Think about that. People that have never been, that couldn't afford it. Yeah, okay. Your seats might not be great. Guess what? I want good seats. I'm gonna have to pay for them. I don't, I want to go to an NBA game. I don't, but if I want to go to an NBA game or an NFL game, I'm gonna pay for those. I gotta pay for that. We got to pay for that. The value for what it is, considering how much time you're in there. Yeah, it's expensive, but at the same point, it's not about cost a lot of ways. It's about the experience, and it's about, I'm gonna take my daughter and her friend to a hockey game next week. And it's like, okay, do I want to get I'm going to get the tickets that are pretty close to our team bench, so we can share that experience together. So those are the things that I think go a lot further than analytics in terms of or cost. It's like, who can bring you can bring 4 kids to the NCAA tournament? No, you're not, unless you've got money. And how you get tickets, you got to have an in. Again, with those availability for those upper level tickets and just the larger expanse. Okay, what's more important, your view for 3 days or the sports view for the next 30 years? That's the important thing to me. So yeah, it's gotta be. And if it's a slam dunk, guess what? That brings baseball stadiums on the table. Globe Life Field has been interested. More. Phoenix has been interested. So those 30, there's arenas don't seat 20,000 anymore. They're right around 15, 16. You need at least probably 18 with a big sheet of ice or some floor space to make it happen. So I think there's some drawbacks in terms of optics and like, a little far, okay, just look at the video board like you do anyway. I don't think it's going to be a big problem.
I was going to say, the people are not looking at the
video
city.
Board. It's a major league city. It's got great food, great music, great beer, great stuff to do. Don't believe half the crap you read on the news. The Twin Cities is a great place. I wouldn't live here if this place sucked. Be honest with you. I hate snow. I hate snow. I hate the cold. And I live in Minnesota. It's a nice place to live.
Go
Great
figure.
place. It's a great place to watch sports.
Yeah, you want the tournament in a warm weather city. You hate snow, but yet you still live in Minnesota because it's a great place to be. I haven't been there.
And I love my wife.
Yeah,
and she's from Minnesota.
There you go. There's the number one reason. Jason Bryant with me right here on On3 Wrestling. Jason, I really appreciate your time today. Obviously, everyone needs to subscribe to Matt Talk Online. Get the subscription. Get the newsletter into your email inbox every single day. Where can people go to find that real quick?
2 quick ways. If you're familiar with the Substack platform, it's been very popular. You can go to matttalkonline.substack.com or on the Substack app. Just search Jason Bryant or Matt Talk Online. Or you can just do the old matttalkonline.com/news. And that one, it's got a bunch of free stuff during the week. I do premium newsletters, though. Like this. Here's the thing. How many hours, Nick, do you spend looking for wrestling news each morning without the newsletter, before the newsletter?
Oh man, if I didn't have the newsletter, I think it might take my entire shift at On3.
So this every day I paste all stuff in the chat GPT. I go, how much time would this save if you did it under at minimum 4 hours of searching?
Yeah. Big time.
And again, I'm about building systems. I built systems to compile that stuff, and I go through, and I don't just, it's not automatic. I go through, I look at it, I grab it, I read it. I read so many stories each day, at least definitely read the first 2 paragraphs and scroll the box score every single day. So a couple of those are free a week, but that daily, the newsletter, that's going to be kind of more of a freemium thing where I give a couple of those for free a week, but that's the time saver. That's the benefit. That's where you're paying for that convenience.
Yeah.
But on top of that free stuff, I'm putting the stats out a lot more for free now. So the weekly stats dumps, rankings, upsets, how the top 25 fared. I'll get these Super 32 digs, these world digs. They're things that come into my mind. I'm going to do that. That's all part of the newsletter. Ad-free podcasts. No offense. If there's something on the Matt Talk Podcast Network, yeah, you get the dynamically inserted ads on the network. If you don't want to do that and you just want no ads, or if you want the video version, which I usually put up first if I do video, that's also in there too. So travel blogs from when I'm around the world, like I've done them from Bulgaria and Croatia this year, and behind the scenes stuff. It's a lot of how the sausage is made if you're into that, but it's also a lot of information from every level of wrestling. So
yeah,
if it's pertinent, like Dell State women helped save somebody's life the other day. That's one of the lead stories in the newsletter. So it is also an opportunity to give a highlight, like Gino Frank. He just passed away. He was a coach at Gettysburg, Greco guy. Cody Becker, was killed in the line of duty. He's a former Millersville wrestler. Opportunity to shine a light on remembering those people. Well, it's not trying to be morbid about putting an obituary in there, but it's like, hey, this is something this person was important to the sport of wrestling. Whether they're not important to you, now they are. You know the story. So there's those stories that I also like to put in there too.
Yeah, never a dull moment with you, Jason. Never a dull moment in that newsletter. So please go subscribe, Matt Talk Online. Jason Bryant with me here on On3 Wrestling. Jason, appreciate your time, my man. Hopefully we get to catch up rather soon. If we don't catch up during the year, hopefully it's during NCAA's in Cleveland out in March.
Cleveland rocks, right?